This will be a live cast, and it's an unplanned live cast. Therefore, I'll be talking about some controversial topics. It really kind of hit home today when I was making my very best effort to ignore anything political recently, even though it just keeps coming up in my feed. And I've noticed that there are many different angles to this. If I use Firefox on my phone to avoid ads, there's a specific channel that always shows up as the second thing. And I know this channel pays to promote itself. It's called the Mo Reese Delk channel. And every single post is a bunch of fingers pointing down at some controversial owning the libs meme. Okay? Now, I'll start off by saying memes are dead. Um, but this is a strange time in history where there is so much propaganda being shoved down our throats that it's hard to even know what's true and what's not. So a few hours ago, as I was going about my day, I was down in the woods and I was tapping maple trees. I found out that I had 14, 14 maple taps instead of thinking I only had 10. And that made me excited. So I went out and I tapped a few more trees. I got a nice drip of sap and I thought, this is the American dream. Owning a piece of land, owning 3 acres with a field and a big barn to park my bus in, and my school bus, of all things, and about an acre of woods, or acre and a half, maybe 2 acres of woods, actually. And so I went out there, and almost the entire woods is maple trees, and I tapped them, and I was thinking, this is really something I am so grateful to have the opportunity for. Because I realize that so many people live in the city, and there are so many people out there who have never had the opportunity to just sleep a quiet night in the country. Now, I grew up, in the Portland area. I moved around a lot when I was young. My family had problems. We had the typical American issues, right? A few years after I was born, we had the oil crisis and everybody was lined up for gas, right? And the 80s come along and we have this whole promise of this new neoliberal generation thanks to Reagan. And I didn't pay much attention to politics at all. And the beauty of growing up was that I didn't have to pay attention to politics. You see, that's the difference. That's what makes something functional. This is something someone pointed out to me years ago. They said, it's not what you see. If you see politics, if you hear about it all the time, there's something going wrong. Because when the wheels are greased and everything's working smoothly, everyone's happy, right? Everyone does their thing. So you all let me know on a side note if there's any issues with the video here. This is the first actual official live cast I've done in like 6 months, and I'm using the Starlink Mini, which has kind of a iffy, you know, range, and so I'm making my best effort. But I made a video about this earlier. As I was saying, I had been trying to ignore politics, and then I saw this video, and I watched. Funny enough, a lot of the videos I see of the most pissed off people are veterans, actual people who served this country, who can see what's going on, who know what real war is like, and realize that there's a bunch of guys with masks cosplaying as, warriors out in the streets. Now, half of America sees it this way, and the other half completely thinks is okay with it, right? You've got plenty of people and people I know who say, well, we've got to restore order. We've got immigration problems. We need to clean up this country. Now, I firmly disagree with this. I I know that I've been accused of being a bleeding heart liberal. Let me just say that I have a very strong heart. I'm not a liberal per se, and I don't like to define myself politically or position wise. But what I see going on in the streets in my country, even though it's all the way across the US right now, disgusts me. It actually makes me angry. Even though I've spent so much of my life trying to learn how to manage my emotions and realize that cooler heads prevail. And we know that when we're all upset, it's the worst time to talk about things. For veterans who happened to have a legal concealed carry permit and he was filming ICE, the details don't matter. I made a whole video about this and I was pretty enraged during the video. And I said, you know what? I don't care. I'm uploading it anyway. And for some reason, it got kind of held up on the upload. YouTube had some kind of issue. It's probably because of the title. And I would assume that YouTube just kind of makes you re-upload things it doesn't like. But let's just say that it pissed me off. It pissed me off. This was a, you know, and I hate it when people say, but it was an American citizen. Yes, that's important. But it was a human being that got shot. Shot. Not just once, but fucking like 10 times. The data, the info is still coming out. But let's just say, first to start out, there were at least 6, 7 agents there, ICE and Border Patrol. By the way, Border Patrol in Minnesota is bullshit. But anyway, 5 guys pinning this one dude who's just a healthcare worker, right? Pinning him to the ground. And somehow, what? You first they pepper sprayed. Here's what happened. And okay. He saw them take this woman, and push her and shove her to the ground like 6 feet, and she slammed down in the ice and the snow. He went to help her and stand between her and ice. So they pepper sprayed both of them. Then they pinned him to the ground. He's freaking out like anybody would. And then one of the guys just straight up shot him. And then as the officers backed up, they unloaded a couple clips into the guy. I was pretty fucking disgusted by this. And I was already just like, with the Renee Good shooting a few weeks ago, I had some discussions with people. I was flabbergasted with people saying, I started thinking, am I just being gaslit here? Or is this really what people feel? And I respect other people's opinion. I respect other people's viewpoints. But after this shooting, I was like, all right, let's see what kind of bullshit comes out of the woodwork now. And sure enough, from what I heard, the White House, Stephen Miller, the biggest piece of shit in American history, the kind of guy that I hope gets gassed in his own gas chamber. And I don't say that lightly. This guy needs to go through his own Nuremberg trial, just like Kristi Noem. These people are absolutely fucking disgusting people. I don't even know if they're people. And I'm going to be honest with you all. Like, I, at one point, didn't think, I've spent my whole life in philosophy trying to figure out if evil is a real force or if evil is merely ignorance disguised as something else. And I'm really careful about this. I mean, I've got so many different books that I've read on every topic you can imagine philosophic wise, but there's a million more that I haven't even considered. I don't know. I'm not going to be a sufferer of the Dunning-Kruger effect. I don't know the details. I don't know what's good for long term for the country, for people in general, for humans, what God wants, what our spiritual path is here. But I do know one thing. No human has the right to take another human's life unless that is a legitimate self-defense. So when I saw that the president had written, like about Renee Good, that the officer got hit and he's in the hospital and hopefully he recovers, and then they said he had all this internal bleeding, that internal bleeding can just be a bruise, right? So I've just been holding back on that one. And then this guy, seeing the video from both angles and saying, wow, this dude was straight up fucking 2 Americans executed blocks apart in one city because the president has some gripe with the Democratic city. And I think there are still Americans who think this is owning the libs. And I want to try to understand people. If I have any subscribers out there that are MAGA, I doubt they fucking still subscribe to my channel. And I understand that. But is there anyone out there that's really still MAGA? And if so, can you not see when you're being hoodwinked? Can you not see when you're being lied to? Because nobody wants to admit that they were fooled. Believe me, I had no problem saying, wow, I voted for Obama. He promised change and we got more of the same. Straight up. Like, I when I found out that Obama, when somebody's like, yeah, Obama actually did more drone strikes than any other president in history, I was like, well, maybe that's because there's more drones than ever. Of course, that's part of it. Then I did the research and found out, nope, he's just another fucking piece of shit. But you know when I really, really realized it? I think it was when Obama was running against Cheney, I believe. And I looked up the statistics on, and hopefully, as an American, if you've ever voted, I would hope, just hope that you would at least look up donors before you cast a vote, whether voting matters or not. But looking up the donors, guess who was the top donor for both Cheney and Obama? It was fucking Goldman Sachs. And I thought, how funny that in 2008, wow, we bailed out the banks. Trillions of dollars lost from Americans. Oh, great. Let's bail out the banks and let Americans lose their homes. And that was the beginning of the end. And this is why I get so frustrated when people say, well, we need to vote Democrats back in. I know people who have literally said they'll vote blue no matter who. And that to me is the worst attitude. I heard somebody say they would vote blue until they die. And I thought, what if parties change their positions, right? What if somebody runs that's a complete piece of shit that just says, oh, yeah, I'm a Democrat? Or just like Rhinos, a well-known, Republican in name only, which is exactly what Trump was. Trump was a Democrat, or claimed to be a Democrat, up until he realized it'd be better to run as a Republican. But the point is, neither the Republicans or the Democrats really give a shit what party they're in. They're in there for power. And when Americans started to see this, they were instantly shut down and ridiculed. I mean, I will even give credit to guys like Alex Jones. I mean, he's a fucking nutcase, but he pointed out a lot of shit that was important. And so it's hard. It's like a broken clock is right twice a day. Oh, I thought everybody left. It said 1, but it was 11 because I've got bad eyesight. But I want to at least read the comments here because I liked the whole point of me doing a live cast is to actually be able to engage with people, and that's why I'm doing this. And I want to know what y'all have to say. Cognito Man, the guy didn't even touch his gun. Then the officer disarmed the dude. 1 second later, they shoot him. That's exactly what happened. I actually concur completely. It's fucking ridiculous, and it pisses me off. Cogito Man, I voted for Trump, but now he's so damn sure he's, yeah. You don't know how much I appreciate that, man. I not because, look, I'm not one of these guys who ever says, oh, I'm right. It's not about being right about Trump. And a lot of dudes on the left, a lot of people on the left are like, oh, fuck MAGA, they're idiots, we'll never forgive them. I'm like, you know what? You're a fucking piece of shit too. You're ruining America by saying you will never forgive somebody that made a mistake. To understand the psychology of humans means to understand that humans will dig in deep when they believe something. And to actually admit I made a mistake, there's nothing fucking wrong with that. That's like the most manly thing you can possibly do. Well, as a man, but womanly too, right? And the funny thing is that so many of these people think that everyone who's protesting is some kind of bleeding heart liberal pussy, which is nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, it's funny, actually, I have this knife over here my son bought me for Christmas. It's pretty cool. It was custom made locally. I noticed buttons have like, say, Oklahoma. It's like the state seal. But it's a really fucking nice blade. And, dual tone wood and everything. I mentioned that because I was thinking earlier how I love knives. I love guns. I love living in the country. I love so many of the things that conservatives love, but I'm just not a conservative. And how hippies are so much like rednecks. We just want to be with our family, hang out, love. Like there has been a division put upon the American fucking people for far too long. People who are convinced that you need to find your neighbor and enemy. That, oh, the people on the other side of the country who live in California, if you're in Kentucky, oh, California is your problem. And then you've got the liberals in California saying, oh, look at Kentucky. It's the most absurd shit. And the more you see through the propaganda, the more you start to understand how full of shit leadership has been for the longest time. And when you start to see it, you can't unsee it. And then you try to tell people about it, and you pretty much just shut up after a while. because nobody wants to hear it. Because most people want to live in this state of bliss, like everything's fine. And I've always told myself, until, basically until American citizens start getting shot in the face, until we have mass Gestapo running through the streets, a lot of people aren't going to see it. They won't see the unfolding. I've had debates with people on the other side, for example, people who are way too overreactive about it, and said, look, this is not the end of democracy. It's not the end of America. It's not the end of elections. That still, I believe, is an overreaction, because I believe we have power in numbers. We've got 350 million people living in this country. And when people say, yeah, but they voted in Trump, it's like, yeah, a third of the people. But I think it was even less than that, like 27%. But if you consider all the people who have realized, whoops, Trump sucks after all, then there's a lot more people than you would think. They're just not the kind of people who go screaming on X or Twitter. They're not the people who are out there posting memes on Facebook. They're the blue-collared American workers who get up every morning and fucking go to work and do their normal jobs. And maybe they'll post some social media once in a while, but they don't want to get involved in the controversy. And then there's people who make their entire living off of pissing off Americans. Think of guys like Tim Pool, okay? Maybe you like Tim Pool. I don't know. I listened to him for a while back in the day. I've just seen him get annihilated by people because his positions are so fucking weak. I've been talking shit about Ben Shapiro for years, and all of a sudden now, oh wow, now people don't like Ben Shapiro. It's like, no fucking shit. This guy doesn't care about America. He's a fucking Zionist. Oh, there I go. I get docked down on the list for saying Zionist, but I'm just done. I'm done with tiptoeing around all these people. The Steven Crowders, oh, well, I'm gay, so I can say stupid shit and pretend I'm a conservative. You've got, and everyone in the White House. I mean, like, the spokesperson, that Caroline Levitt, or whatever her name is, like, every time she talks, it's a lie. And it's just so amazing. And I watched this deposition. They were asking, not her, but Kristi Noem, because Trump claimed in some interview that Abrego Garcia had MS-13 tattooed literally on his knuckles. And the interviewer was trying to say, well, you realize that was photoshopped on, right? He's like, no, it says it right there. I mean, they argued about this for like 5 minutes. And I'm like, okay, so we have a guy in power that is basically dementia ridden. Half the people don't want to admit it. And just like the Democrats didn't want to admit that Biden had dementia. And look, I remember it because I had friends who were Democrats, and I was saying, dude, you can't keep supporting this guy. He's obviously losing his mind. And they would say, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you're talking about. And then the minute that, the media says Biden's, incompetent, they're like, oh yeah, Biden's incompetent. Like, I didn't want to believe that people were so sheepish that they really didn't think for themselves, because I want to believe that people are rational. I want to believe that people are reasonable. And I still believe that. I do. I still believe that most people are rational, because otherwise we would never be able to make this society work. It's just that the loudest mouths usually have the least to say. And you see this all the time. I mean, some of the most prolific posters of, like, internet trash and political crap. I mean, all these people do is just post political crap. That's like their job. So engagement farming is basically what it is. And enragement is engagement. So when you get people enraged, you get them upset, then they're going to keep clicking. Nobody cares if you click on their video just to hate on it. Nobody cares if you comment 10 times and keep coming back and arguing. That's money for them. So I think that we're coming to a point where people are going to realize that the best thing to do is scroll right past it and don't engage at all. That's what I've been doing with, like, that channel I mentioned, the Maurice Dope channel or whatever. I know what to, as soon as I scroll up a little bit on, and it only happens on Firefox. If any of you out there know why this happens, let me know. Because I argued with my brother about it, and I was saying, well, the algorithm it's different on Firefox. And he's like, no, it should be the same. It's like, no, but it's not. Because on YouTube, on Chrome or Google or Chrome or whatever I use, the one with ads, then I get, usually a pretty standard feed. But if I use Firefox on my phone, and I have an ad blocker on there, which is why I use it. And I only use it when I want to watch a longer video that has tons of ads. I'm like, fuck this shit. Because I do like to support the creators. So, I don't mind ads all the time. But it's the reason I don't. I just don't want to buy into that fucking paradigm. And you can tell the ones that just want to make the money, right? And I think that his is one of those kind of click engagement channels. But it's weird that it only shows up as like the second or third post, like when I go to the home button on Firefox on my phone. But I don't know why it works that way. I looked up the guy. He is a real guy. He's got like tons of freckles. He's a weird looking dude that has some Trump fascination. I don't know. Doesn't matter to me, because I'm at this point now where I realize that I'm not alone, that so many Americans can see through this bullshit, and that even a lot of the people who were once Trump supporters have told me, okay, fuck, man, I see this guy's a douchebag now. Anyone who still doesn't see that Trump's a douchebag, I really don't know, like, where you left your brain. I'm sorry for that, but it's like, come on, at some point, at some point. Uh-oh. I didn't know my phone was going to make noises. Probably not. I got to turn it down. Hold on. Okay, I go to the volume thing here and go. There we go. All right. I think I figured it out. All right. So where was I at? I was going to read the rest of the comments here. Who we got? Rowan reads. I don't recognize your name, Rowan. My apologies if I don't know you, but he says, I was MAGA 2016 to 2018, then very rapidly realized how full of shit Trump was. Hard to understand his base is so hardcore. But that's part of psychology, dude. That's the thing. And like what Cogito Man says after that, he thought Trump was great because he was unhinged talking shit. You know what? Even as a fucking left-leaning person, I had argued, even after Trump's first term last year, I was arguing with people who I knew who were left. I was saying, give him a fucking chance, dude. I was like, there is a lot of hate from the left on him, and they're really pushing him into a corner. I was like, I need a guy who tells it like it is, even if it's not how it is. So I still kind of stand by this. And the people I know who are like liberal, who are the Democrats, they don't understand how I can have this viewpoint. But I said our country needed to go through a complete collapse. And the way I described it was not a complete collapse, rather, but as you would say with an alcoholic, you don't know how bad it is until you hit fucking rock bottom. Same with a heroin addict, right? When you get to the very lowest and you're in the dregs of society, and then you pull yourself out of it, you realize, I never, ever fucking want to go back to being that person. And America has been so passive for so fucking long that I see us actually finally pulling our heads out of our asses eventually and saying, oh God, no, 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 not another one of these belligerent douchebags. I fucking pray I'm right. Because I have friends who say that we're doomed, and I don't believe that. I believe that we will have an election. Okay? We will have an election in 2028. And the Republicans will not win, okay? No matter what kind of bullshit they pull, you got to have faith that the American people will come together. Because if they can get a small group of angry douchebags together on January 6th to go attack cops and raid the Capitol, can you imagine what actual Americans could do if they're shit? Because I'm telling you, the silent majority exists. There are people like me. We have homes, we have lives, we have jobs, we have things to do. We can't go out and spend our time fighting tyranny, and but when shit gets bad, everyone's there and they have an opinion. And when you have a guy that ran on solving the economic problems and lowering grocery prices and everything else, the best he can do is drop oil prices a little bit, right? By fucking kidnapping the legitimate leader of another country. Like, And then over the past few weeks, threatening to take Greenland. Not just that, but the bluster on like Twitter and shit. I just hear about this secondhand. Like, we have the president of the US tweeting pictures of the United States, Greenland, and Canada with an American flag on them. I just want to say, if you're a Canadian neighbor, I'm so fucking sorry. From the bottom of my heart, as an American, I want to tell you that most of us do not fucking agree with this shit. I'm in the Pacific Northwest. I don't know what it's like in the South. I don't know how many fucking people in various geographic areas, would agree with this. But we're just doing our thing. We have our own lives. And I'll tell you, if you were really to ask, 99% of Americans have no interest in taking Canada or Greenland. We do not give a shit. We do not want another country. We can't even take care of our own, let alone the president posting, I believe, on Wikipedia that he's now the president of Venezuela. There's a lot to cover here, people. There's a lot to cover. And I'm not going to talk much about Trump because it's difficult not to, but I really need to cover what's going on in the cities. Because while Trump can direct his goon force, and they probably goon in their vans all the time, to go out there on American streets with masks, completely armed to the hilt, with really poor training and probably anger issues, among other things. And then Trump comes out and says, you have total immunity. You can do whatever you want. Then they do. And that's what's happening right now. And so while I don't see this as the end, I don't see this as we're doomed, I just say Americans should wake the fuck up and say, you have more power than you realize. You have the power in numbers. And the internet's not going to do it for us. You can't get together on the internet and share anything anymore. It's all fucking AI bullshit. You're going to get so much propaganda and so many bot farms bombarding you. You just got to get together locally. Join with local people. Ask them how they feel. At some point, every city's going to have to do what they need to do to survive. I live in a place where I don't have to worry about it. But I still care, Because if it's bad in the cities, it's bad in the country. That's just the way it works. The economy works for all of us, or it doesn't. So, I don't know. It's a crazy time to be alive, that's for sure. Where was I? I'm going to read some more of the comments and see where I was. Yeah, he did say it was the truth. I agree with that. Yeah, that was what he said. He said, I do like Tim Pool. Tim Pool, the interview he did with, what was the guy's name? And it's not a guy I like, but he's a liberal dude. I think it's Luke Beasley. And he's okay. He's pretty well researched. But, Tim Pool just went off on the guy. How do you have this evidence? And it was about Enrique Tarrio being arrested on January 6th and getting like a 22-year prison sentence. But he was saying he wasn't even in the Capitol. And he's like, well, it was for conspiracy to overthrow the government because there was a bunch of communications. Now, look, do I agree with people being arrested and sent away for 20 years for that shit? Not necessarily. Even if I don't agree with the guy, I still have a certain amount of freedom of speech, 100% freedom of speech, which I'll get into. But there are laws that say if you, conspire to overthrow the government and try to inspire people to do that, it is illegal. So it's like, who am I to tell the courts? And I don't know how biased the courts are. That makes it very difficult. I'm just an American. So it's a complicated shit. It always has been. It's a mess. Deedster Do, good to see you. Oh, I just arrived and I need hope. Don't we all, my brother? Cogito Man, donation. I really appreciate you, my friend. Thank you. Matthew Bro says, I forgive you. What do you forgive me for? Deedster Do, I've been sick to my stomach all day. I cannot let this bother me. Oh, it's too late for me. I was saying earlier, I already made a video. It was like a 15-minute video, just angry as hell about this. But it won't upload, and it's probably just YouTube or maybe my internet. I don't know, but Carpo needs a Trump 2028 hat. No, hell no. I'm actually moving well, not moving. I was going to say I'm running, not moving. I saw that because I saw Canada. I was going to run for. I was joking with my kid earlier. I was like, he's like, you could run for president. I'm like, yeah, any son would say that to their dad. I was like, but because I made a joke years ago that I'm running in 2036. And then I just said, I'm bumping it back to 2040 just to give the dust time to settle. You know what I mean? Because it's like 2036, holy shit. Because I said, well, I turned 50 last year. By 2036, I'll be 60, and that's a good age to run. But then I said, I'll just see how things pan out, maybe give it another 4 years. Maybe I'll just do it at retirement age. Or I could just wait till I'm 80 like all the presidents do now, right? When you're very sharp and aware, the best time to run for president is when you're an octogenarian and you're almost dead already. Because hey, what could go wrong? Anybody who's seen a dementia patient. But I did see a picture of Trump walking out the other day. I don't know if it was Davos or something, but they did an analogy. He was like really hunched over with his mouth open, and I thought, this poor dude. Like, I still have empathy for even the people that I despise the most. And I know that sounds harsh. There's some people that just hate the guy so much, and I'm like, dude, I just want him to be happy. I just want Trump to be fucking happy, dude. Like all that gold and ballroom and all that power and all these wars. He just wants that Nobel Peace Prize that was given to him. And I'm like, I just want the dude to be happy. If he could be happy, he wouldn't be such a dick. And there's something to learn there for all of us. Because ultimately, people's insecurity, it doesn't make me hate them. It just makes me sad for them. But when you're running the country and you're destroying people's lives, it starts to make me hate you. So, I don't know. But I try not to let it get to me because I know that the cronies behind the scenes are the ones pulling the strings, and Trump at this point is the puppet because he's too old and dumb to really understand what he's even doing. He's got a little bit left, but his wit's gone. He's fading quick. And it's sad that we've got guys like J.D. Vance and Stephen Miller, who really does look like a vampire. But anytime, if I bring these people up, they're like, well, what's wrong with it's just like, oh my God, like, have you ever seen any of these people interviewed by like normal people? Like any of these people, like under fire or under pressure, they just avoid every single question. They just don't answer. And it's because they can't. And so I don't believe in hell. I'm not a Christian in that sense. I do believe in Christ, but it's not probably a Christian version of Christ. And I speak to Christ, but it's more of a Christ consciousness. But I know, sure as hell, my version of Christ would never let some bitch like Christy Noam into heaven if there was a heaven. And if there hell, it's definitely reserved for people like her and Stephen Miller. And yeah, probably Trump too. But, somebody's got to be punished, right? I had this joke about bringing back the stockades. And you might think of cattle. I'm talking about the ones where you would put people in there with their hands in their head, and people would throw fruit on them. And when I was growing up and I heard about that, it seemed so medieval and like primal, and I thought, oh, that's not a good thing. But the older I get, the same with public executions and beheadings and shit. But nowadays, I'm just thinking that it's very expedient as long as the right people are put on trial. But who decides, right? But if somebody honestly were to say, okay, well, we're having let's just take a theoretical idea here. There's a vote in America, and they say, okay, it's something like the Nuremberg trials. After all this is said and done, and they round up all these people, J.D. Vance, Stephen Miller, all these guys, and they say, well, we are taking a vote on whether we should do, public executions. I'm not going to say that I would vote yes, but I understand that setting an example is very important. And nobody forgot Marie Antoinette. I'll just leave it there. Definitely don't want to incite anything horrible because that makes me sound like a monster. But I'll tell you this. Each one of us has a monster in us. You may not admit it, you may not see your dark side, but it's there. And when the shit gets bad, people are more than willing to step up to the plate and say, I'm not going to take any more of this shit. You will be sidelined. You will be ridiculed for speaking your mind, no matter what position you take. And that's why a lot of people are afraid to say anything. But right now, I think it's essential. If you're an American that sees what's going on and understands what's going on, I really urge you to speak up if you can. Um, the idea that you're afraid of being singled out is it. You know, we're only as individuals protected if everyone is protected, and even that's yes, even immigrants. I'm sorry if you have an issue with people being here illegally. I understand that, and we can deal with that problem. But when you're going in and arresting people coming out of asylum hearings, when you're going into hospitals, when you're going into high schools, when you're going into grade schools, when you're arresting 5-year-olds, that's not getting the worst of the worst, which is what people told us, right? From what I've seen on the data, less than 5% of the people arrested by ICE have any violent history. And many of those were considered, get this, DUIs. So I don't know the actual data. I don't know the actual statistics. All I know is what I've seen like every other American. A bunch of thugs on the streets. 3,000 ICE and Border Patrol agents in a city with only 600 cops. Cops who are being kept out. But the most, and unable to do any type of actual investigation in their own town. And this is breaking all the amendments, right? The first, the second, the fourth, the sixth. I mean, it's all falling apart, the Constitution. And the constitutionalists are silent about it, you know. The real hardcore right wingers who pretended they cared about law and order are all of a sudden just on board to break law and order if it's the other guy, you know. And I find that pretty sickening personally. But like I said earlier, I know how hard it is once you've dug in on a position. But people do it every day. When you find out new information and you realize this isn't what I thought, you know, it. I don't want to. It's that kind of thing about like when you've watched a movie halfway, right? And you're like, "Fuck, might as well finish it." It's you know you can't see it like that. And there's a term for that that I is completely slipping my mind, but it's you know, fuck. I hate it when I forget terms. But anyway, you've got to be able to change with new information. And everything we learn about the world should help us better adjust to the future, you know? Anyway, take a break for a minute. I have to go to the bathroom. Um, hey, I wanted to say hi to everybody here first. Hello, Harrison. Good to see you. Oh, Matthew is a Canadian. I'm sorry, brother. Kagito Man says Americans have become numb to violence. No, I appreciate you saying that. I definitely haven't. I've tried to hang on to my empathy, even for the worst of the people, but it's hard, dude. It's hard. Hello, Blessed Man. Hello, Hyper Horizon. People don't like Jordan Peterson. Act like a sheep. Yeah, Jordan Peterson lost his fucking mind, but you know, it's real life. Deedster do. Is this real life? I need confirmation. And thank you, Hyper Horizon Sunk Cost Fallacy. That I knew somebody would say it. I'm like, God, I've said this term a million times and I don't even remember what it is right now. So I guess I need a like will be back shortly sign, but I don't have one, so I'll just kind of put this in my place. There we go. The 15-minute free thinking sign, which yeah, we'll get into that after I go to the bathroom. Gets harder to stand up as you get older. That's okay. That's why I got 3 legs. Oh, how ironic! I just went down to take or to get a yogurt. I went pee and got a yogurt, but my son's like, "Oh, did you hear ICE is in Battleground?" It's like the fact I have to hear that shit from my kids and that they're exposed to all that crap too. It makes it hard as a parent. You got to explain all this shit to them. Be like, "I'm sorry that thugs might show up at your school, but anyway, obviously I have an opinion on this topic, and I've always been cautious in the past about what I want to talk about politically, not because I'm afraid of ostracizing people, but because I just want people to be happy. I want positivity. I want to share the positivity in the world and the things I've discovered and the things that are interesting and keep this like OG style, right? Like a YouTube channel where you just talk about life. But then sometimes some shit happens. So it's like, for example, if I had my YouTube channel and everything was fine and then we just suddenly had a forest fire and we were surrounded by fire, you better believe I'd be posting the forest fire pictures because that's what's going on in life. And I think a lot of it people are afraid to speak out for fear of ridicule. And what you'll find is if you do speak up, most of the hate doesn't come from real people. It comes from fucking bots, bot farms, and bullshit. There are no groups of Americans who are really standing out there and saying, haha, we're going to dominate own the libs. It's like a very small group of idiots who really think that the things that they hear on the internet are true. And this brings me to kind of part 2 of my discussion, which relates to AI. We're at the point now where if a video comes out of an incident, a person can take that video, maybe 2 different angles, and literally plug it into a system and have it alter that image. It doesn't matter if it's discovered later. This is the scariest time in history for truth when it comes to video and audio. That's why we need to abandon. What we need to do is go back to listening to each other instead of listening to pundits, experts, or especially the government. And I can't believe anyone still believes the federal government. I mean, my whole life, since I read William Cooper's work in the 90s, I've just never trusted any of them. They've always been corrupt to me. And I don't know, I've always expected a full collapse of the American empire. I remember reading about 35 years ago, like, I think it was in Cooper's book, Behold a Pale Horse, and he was talking about how there's a prophecy that the great dragon will rise again, or the red dragon will rise, and somehow in the later in the 2000s, that basically China would dominate the world. And I was like, back then, this is when China was pretty poor. They've come a long way in the last 35 years. But at the same time, I was like not surprised at all. I was like, these are a dedicated people. Regardless of what you think about their politics, their government, that's all beside the point. The thing is, you have to look at what is, not how you would like it to be. So even though it's a communist government, they are highly structured, highly dedicated, and highly organized, and they work as, a colony. They fucking build. And the U.S., in the meantime, since at least the Nixon administration, has been griping about what's right and what's wrong and having internal government problems, increasing the bureaucracy, promises every election to make things better. And many people like me just sitting there going, I'd rather support anarchy than this shit. And I mean that when I've said I'm an anarchist in a way. It doesn't mean I don't believe in any leadership. I just believe in a natural leadership that bleeds into the system by choice, not by force. Not a coerced leadership. I should say leadership. Yes, just period, leadership, as opposed to I make the rules. It's what I say goes. I mean, it's so pathetic. It's funny. My whole life, I've managed to not be morally, physically disgusted. Like I've heard of people saying, "Oh, I'm disgusted by this. Oh, it makes me nauseous." And I've always thought, how weak do you have to be like be nauseous by something you hear? No. Some shit I've heard lately has made me pretty nauseous. So, not physically, I guess, not nauseous, but just like, whoa, are we really at this place? And not just like as to where we are as as a nation, but as a world, like to think that my leaders are distancing basically every legitimate friend we've ever had in the world, threatening to take other countries that have backed us up and helped us immensely for decades. However, when people say this is not reparable, I don't believe that. Because I know that these foreign leaders who have dignity and respect, a lot of them, they see, they're not stupid. They see what's going on. They see we have a belligerent fucking administration, and they also see that a lot of Americans don't agree with it. So the minute we fix this problem, whatever that takes, these other countries are never going to, they're not as petty as Trump. They're not on a revenge fucking tour like he is. They're not out to just make people look bad and act like a jerk. They'll say, "All right, let's get back to business because we all have to live as humans together, right?" I mean, there are adults in the room. I'm just saying, and we just have to bide our time, wait for it, while at the same time being active in a new future and figuring out where we want to go from here, figuring out if we want a better leader, if we want better leadership, so to speak. And no, the Democrats ain't the answer. They sure as hell ain't the answer. I've argued till I'm blue in the face with Democrats about this. I'll never vote for a Democrat or a Republican again in my entire life. Ever. You better get somebody on that fucking ticket who matters. And I will vote. I'll still vote when the presidential election comes, but I'll do a write-in. And I'll convince other people to do a write-in too. They told us it was pointless. They told us it was a wasted vote. And I've never believed that. Even when Bernie wasn't on the ticket and the Democrats kicked him out, I wrote him in. Why? Do I think Bernie has all the answers? No. But do I think he cares? A fucking hell of a lot more than what we have now. And if the problems, weren't solved, then guess what? In another 4 years, he would concede the election to someone else and we'd move on. He wouldn't incite a riot to try to say the election was stolen, which it wasn't. And it's just he was very embarrassed to lose. He was very determined to serve 2 terms because there's nothing more embarrassing than running a first term, being a one-term president that has to run again. And then trying to win the Nobel Peace Prize and having it given to you. I'm just like, I feel like I'm living in a fucking play, right? It's almost like we've switched timelines. I've heard people say shit like that, but I'm just like, is this really real? Am I dreaming right now? Or are we this just lost? It just blows my mind. I'll sip my delicious coffee. Consider that. Anyway, I'll catch up with you all in the comments here real quick. Where was I? All right, I said hello to everybody. Blessed man, hello Hyper Resin. There we go. Where's Lucy? Says Blessed man. Hopefully outside, because she's a nuisance. When I'm in here, I need quiet, and she'll just come and spill all my shit. Andrew Potter, good to see you, my friend. Blessed man says, do you think 2026 is the year? Well, you'll have to clarify what you mean by that one. Friends saying China would take over in 2001. Yeah, it's true. They're getting there. Mr. Z Red Badger says wrong. Hmm. I'll have to ponder that one for probably 40 years before I figure out exactly what you meant by that. That's a joke. If you have something specific, it's wrong. I mean, point it out. I'm all good. I'm all ears for that, dude. uh, Bernie is a good human, although I was born in Vermont. Nice, Vermont. Wait. Oh wait, where was it? Oh, Armageddon. Armageddon. Okay, so I believe Armageddon was originally Megiddo, like a translation, and it wasn't actually about disaster. It was about a place. But I also wanted to say that Apocalypse was never a disaster either. It's an unveiling or an unsealing of the truth. And I feel like the apocalypse that we are facing right now is an unveiling for the people who actually thought the federal government was competent, because they never have been. They're just a bunch of guys running around in suits who pretend they know what's best. You have to realize that there's nobody who's lived more life than you have, right? That's your age. Like, we've always had this image. Think about the way that a kid looks at a guy in Hollywood. Like, wow, this actor, he's amazing. And then you find out that they're a total drunk, they're fucked up, they're a wife beater, and you're like, oh God, my image was broken. The old never meet your heroes thing, right? But the same thing goes with the government. You see these guys in position, even whether they're politicians or pastors, right? Pay attention. The ones who point the finger the most at a certain group of people, you better believe that's pointing right back at themselves. They don't even notice it, the projection. Especially like some of these like and Christian leaders who say, these people live in sin and this is debauchery and this is against God, and then you find out they get caught in a motel room with some fucking gay trans dude, like in the most precarious situations. Like, it is the craziest shit to find out how perverted some of these people are, but you'll find out that they're the ones pointing the fingers at others, just the way Trump pointed the finger about the files. And we all know the Epstein files, on the fact that there's millions of pages, they said, and they released a couple thousand that were like heavily redacted. I just laughed. I was like, do you really think they're going to? Do you really think that the administration would ever release files to compromise themselves and other billionaires? But no, but we know. We know that there's a world full of billionaires that are all fucking raping little girls. Okay? Just put it bluntly, right? They're rapists. Okay, that's the way I see it. There's no way around it. I don't care if people. I even had one person I talked to who tried to say, well, it's not actually pedophilia. There's a different term for it. It's like when you're infatuated with teenagers, dude, fucking give me a break, dude. I'm sorry. They're all pedos, okay? And I'm disgusted by that. That's something I will never stand behind. It's something I will never support. I will never accept an older man going for a younger girl that has been brought in from somewhere else as a sex slave. But that's where we're at. Look, anyone who supports Trump at this point supports pedophiles. That's the way I see it. I don't say that just out of the blue. I truly believe that. And I don't think that necessarily it means that they are pedophiles. I just mean that what we know. We all know the same thing. We all know who's protecting who. And yes, the president has the choice to release these documents. He's choosing not to because his great buddy, Jeffrey, I just like, at that point, when I heard people defending pedophiles, I realized we're cooked. It disgusts me. I'm like, and then I saw this like interview with somebody about this church, some church, like youth group. It's like a summer camp that recently, I think Sean Ryan did an interview with somebody about this, but she had exposed that like these thousands of kids that got, or hundreds at least, that they believe thousands that got, sexually abused by these camp counselors at this Christian camp. And I thought, the fact that we hide this shit in our society Like in the Catholic Church, if a priest's accused of this shit, they just send him down to South America to abuse other kids. Like, how do humans let this shit slide? I've just never understood it. I really don't understand it. I'm sorry, I don't want to get into the pedo thing. It just, it's very bothersome. It's very bothersome when kids can't grow up with a normal fucking childhood and instead they're treated like toys. Like, how could that not? Well, how is that even controversial? Like, if I could have every pedophile in the world lined up with fucking chopping blocks for their heads, straight up guillotines for every one of them, I would stand and watch it. In fact, I bring my children to watch it. I don't care. I do not care. People talk NAMBLA. There's actually a National Man Boy Love Association. Like, I remember South Park did an episode about that, and I kind of took it half joking. But no, they exist. They have a whole page, a charter about how the love between a man and a boy should be. Fuck you guys. Y'all deserve to have your dicks cut straight off and thrown in a fucking lake. That's the way I see it. Not even in a lake. They need to be thrown out in the ocean on a hook and catch a fucking shark with it to make sure it's chomped to pieces. Because you don't deserve to have one. You don't deserve it. Sew your fucking lips shut while we're at it. I'm sorry. I just have a really strong thing against people who abuse children, and I think you should too. And I'm pretty sure most of you probably do. God, I'm on one tonight, aren't I? I'm sorry. I was trying to make this positive in the long run, but we got ICE shooting people in the face. We got pedos in churches. Look, I'll just tell you this. Keep your kids fucking close, okay? Keep your kids close. Don't believe that, anybody who's working with children has your children's interest at heart. Like, I've considered working with kids. I want to work with kids. In fact, I want to counsel, like, teenagers if I can, but that would only be, it doesn't work with your own family, right? You've got to talk to strangers. That's just how I found it works. And do I think I'm capable of that? I don't know. I'd have to talk to people. But the point being that even wanting to be involved in something like that, you instantly get suspected of being like, why do you want to work with kids? And I suppose that's a good thing, because kids are a pain in the ass. Not a lot of people do want to work with kids. I just have an empathy and I want to see the new generation grow up with some fucking decent habits. I can't even get my own kids to have decent habits. I'll be honest, I can't even get myself to have decent habits. But Lord, I try. I'm trying to do better. I think we're all trying to do better. And, with all the shit going on in the world, economically, otherwise, weather related, migration, you just have to throw the cherry on the cake by having some fucking despot bullshit leader in here, like throwing laws out and completely stripping away people's rights. Shooting a fucking nurse, what, 7 to 10 times? I don't even know what data will come out to be. I don't care. Like, I found that I have to look at everything right away now and watch the videos themselves in their entirety to know if I'm being lied to in the long run, to know if I'm being fooled. Am I being lied to? Has somebody doctored this shit? Has somebody changed the image? Has the government themselves come out and like made a deep fake where I'll never know if this person was really, I've seen in the last 3 weeks, so many people have been shot by ICE, but two specific Americans, which of course were Renee Good and this, God, I forget his name already. Damn it. Anyway, the guy that got shot today, the nurse, and I thought both of these, the fucking, the administration came out and said that they were domestic terrorists. Do any of you believe that those were domestic terrorists? And if not, god damn, how far have we sunk? There's one thing I know about a narcissist. They'll never admit when they're wrong. They'll never admit they made a mistake. And we have a full-blown narcissistic fucking administration. Every single one of them. I think they're scumbags, and I think that we as Americans might, in the end, actually have to get the quietest of us together and actually do something about it. And I hate that because when people talk about a civil war, I was like, no, that's some bot talk. There's nobody talking about a civil war. In fact, what the fuck front would you fight it on? Have you been to the Midwest? Have you seen how sparse the country is? Who's going to take up arms and against whom? No, that's their way of trying to cover for the fact that they're scared to fucking death of a revolution. They are scared to death of 300 million Americans. Well, there's 350 million, but I would say 50 would probably step back and complain about the protests. But the rest of us, can you imagine if every American stood up for what they actually fucking believed and felt? That's not going to happen until we're pushed into a corner. Think about it like any other animal. The human species as a whole is an animal. If you push a human into a corner far enough, they'll attack. If you push a mountain lion, a bear, any creature into a corner, they'll attack. But what if you push the whole American population into a corner? Well, have you ever seen past revolutions? Have you seen how this shit goes down? It's not pretty. It's not anything anybody wants. But it ain't hard to get done. People sacrifice their lives. There's a lot of chaos. And when the dust settles, everybody knows better. Hopefully. I fucking hope so. But we're living in a different world. Mass surveillance. And people who are licensed to kill, literally. I mean, ICE is told that they have full immunity from any prosecution, okay? If any American who supports ICE at this point, knowing that they're immune to any prosecution whatsoever, has to ask themselves, okay, how well are these people trained to deal with situations? And when you see them shooting a guy, emptying their clip into a guy who's on the sidewalk, already dead, not a threat. When you see 5 ICE agents tackle a guy, but they still can't get him in cuffs, and then one guy just starts emptying his fucking gun into the guy, you think, okay, it's a nurse. Okay, it's a nurse for veterans. He's 37 years old. He's got a family. He's a human being. He's a normal person living out there in Minneapolis, and he decided he wanted to help some lady that was pushed over. And yeah, maybe he got in their way. So what? I don't care. Civil disobedience, yeah, it's still illegal, but it's not just a right. I would say it's an obligation. You will get arrested for civil disobedience, but you do not expect to get shot in the face. You do not expect to get shot 7, 8, 10 times on the sidewalk when you're already laying there. So everybody should see this for what it is. There's no way to hide it anymore, right? Oh, God, it's gross. It really is. Anyway, I want to say hello to anybody else who joined here because I like saying hi to people. I guess Mr. Badger just said wrong and never explained his point. I get that every time. Whenever somebody says, oh, you're wrong, I was like, well, what do you mean? And then there's just crickets. Armageddon. The shit hitting the fan. It's getting there. Canadian. Oh, Sharon. Good to see you. Canadian neighbor. So sorry for the shit going on here. Yeah, I do too. The orange testicle goblin. Biff Tannen, holy shit. I haven't seen you in a while. Hey, it's good to see you, my friend, and thank you for the donation. I appreciate that. I really do. B Woodworks, good to see you. Scapegoat, E-Scapegoat, sorry. Martial law, yep, unofficial martial law, pretty much. That's what we're at. I mean, when you have 600 cops in the town and 3,000 ICE and Border Patrol agents, and by the way, what the fuck is Border Patrol doing in Minnesota? Aren't you a little far from home, Texan boy? Like, get the fuck back to your own state. And I say that because you're complying with orders you know are wrong. And let's just say that to join ICE, it doesn't take a fucking genius. That's been made pretty clear by now. Cogito Man says, what should we do about illegal immigration? How do we solve the problem? Scapegoat says amnesty. Ooh, that's a tough one. I would say, okay, to answer that question, I could give you my view. I would say 10 years ago, I would have a totally different opinion than I do today. I would say deport, who we can. Look, I'm going to tell you this. I am fully in support of deporting anybody who's here illegally, regardless of whether they're in the process of getting a visa or not. If they have actually committed a violent crime against somebody. Do I believe that that should be the case just because a person was busted with weed or something? No. Traffic ticket? No. When they say criminal, it can be anyone. But if you talk to the communities where these immigrants live, how many people do you see in the community that are out in the streets like saying, yeah, we want these immigrants gone? Like, for example, where are the pro-ICE protesters? They don't exist. There are some people who are scared and stay in their homes and they're like, yeah, go get them out of here. I don't like the immigrants. But a vast majority of Americans are okay with immigration within limits. What I would say is the reason why 10 years ago it would be different is because today we have done so much devastation to South America and other countries that, and I know a lot of folks don't agree with me on this, but I say we are obligated to take in immigrants, not just because we always have, but because we need them for the country, for one. I mean, to keep the jobs flowing, and people think that Americans are going to take all these jobs. That's not the case. We're not reproducing fast enough, for one, but immigration has always been part of the country. But more than that, yes, get rid of every violent criminal. I'm totally okay with that. But you don't show up at schools. You don't show up and fucking march down the street in full fatigues. You target the people you're going to target. That's fine. Here's the way I see it. If they were really targeting individuals, they'd be able to get those people easily. We've had CIA, FBI, fucking ICE forever. Like, these people can go in plain clothes, catch a person off guard, and arrest them if they know where they're at. When you have 3,000 people in one town, 3,000 people saying that they're getting illegal, getting criminals out, I would just say this. Being in the United States illegally itself is just a civil offense. It's like a traffic ticket. Okay? And being an illegal, you still have all free rights, like a freedom of speech, for example. Not all the same rights, but your freedom of speech is for anybody on American soil. So when they start arresting people in their homes that are like, maybe illegal, that because of something they said, oh God, it gets really slippery. It's a really slippery slope. I'm kind of a freedom of speech absolutist. I'm one of those guys who says, if you want to say the N-word, you want to say fag, Jew, whatever, I don't care. You can say anything you want and I have no problem with it. Do I think that the platforms have to host that? No, I don't. They're private institutions. But do I believe every American can stand on the street corner and say whatever they feel? Yes, I do. And I also believe I have the right to stand up and say you're a fucking douchebag for saying that. That's just how life goes. But you should never be arrested for something that you say, something you feel. And that's what's happening. The administration has been selectively harassing and arresting people because they had posts on social media, maybe that were critical. That kind of shit. That's when it gets weird. It gets really weird when you're arresting people for their opinions. It really does. So I hope that answered the question, I guess. Tori Scott. I believe a scapegoat pointed out exactly what I was saying. We are obligated because the USA has messed up in many countries and we offer asylum to make up for that. It's true. I mean, dozens of countries that we've done our coups in, and we really need to fix that. We need to apologize for it and move forward, Yes, we do. I think, let me tell you this. A few months ago, I looked up the cost of illegal immigration because I really wanted to know. And the numbers I got were, I wanted to say it was like the cost of having immigrants in the country, what it would cost the taxpayer overall. And I want to say it was like $150 million. Is that right? No. Was it billion? It must have been billion. Yeah, sorry. God damn it. Now I can't remember. Because I want to say there's no way the ICE budget is 300 billion. Or is it? Dude, the numbers are so fucking meaningless now. Let me just say that I did all the documentation I could on how much immigration costed. And this was minus what they put back into the community, what they give to other people, what they, I mean, I know they send a lot of money back to Mexico, right? But a lot of immigrants work hard here. They do not collect their Social Security but they pay Social Security if they have legitimate checks, which a lot do. And they also actually buy shit in the community, right? And and they have to live and they have to pay for gas and all these things. And you find out that the cost of illegal immigration, even not even including removing, like making it less of a cost because of all the money they put back in, just the cost was like half of what the ICE budget is for next year alone. Like, I couldn't believe it. Like, how much money they've like tripled the ICE budget. And I thought, okay, so is this really about immigration? Because if it's about immigration, then what's the problem? Okay, if it's not about crime, because only less than 5% of arrested even have a criminal record, I thought, what is it about then? Is it about control? Is it about fear? It's about all these things. It's a fucking psyop. It's the biggest psyop that we've ever fell for in this country. The fact that we need masked armed federal agents in democratic cities to somehow restore order, even though the local citizens don't want them there. And then we have these MAGA guys in totally other states cheering this on. Like, I would be furious if I lived in Minnesota. I would definitely be down there on the corner. Like, what the fuck are you guys doing up here, Border Patrol from Texas? Shouldn't you be protecting your own shit? Why don't we see ICE down in Mexico or down in Texas? Why don't we see ICE in some of these red states on the southern border, even though they have more immigrants? Oh, I'll tell you why. Because they're fucking red states. It's a game. It's a ploy. It's his revenge tour. Okay, so it is true. Minnesota has a lot of immigrants. They also have a lot of Somali immigrants, which he seems to be targeting. But I would say, from what I looked at, and I don't know how accurate the statistics are, but over 95% of the Somali population there is there legally. So, you know, it's really hard to admit when it becomes racist, but it's not that I believe it's racist just because a person is another color or culture. I think it's racist because it's easier to pick on minorities. It's easier to pick on small groups and weaker people. And if you can convince Americans that their enemy is their neighbor, then you're doing pretty well, you know, in like getting them to follow whatever bullshit you want to put down next time. I I've kind of waited this out for the last year, even though I said like, even though I was defending the position, I was like, well, if America votes for Trump, we'll see what happens. And sure enough, he's implemented pretty much all the worst things I could have possibly imagined. You know, stripping foreign aid and trying to dismantle education, firing judges, and kicking out the fact checkers, kicking out anybody who had any semblance of respect, like in the government. And I know most Americans don't really realize that we've been stripped to the bones yet. Like, especially folks who, on the right, no offense, you probably don't get the same information because they don't want you to know what's going on behind the scenes. They just say, we're getting rid of unnecessary programs. And they bring in a guy like fucking Elon Musk to do it. Unfucking believable how many people simped for Elon Musk. And I've never been a fan of him. I know I've gotten a lot of hate for not liking him. But God, how could you like him? Like, he is one of the biggest douchebags in the world. He's so insecure. And I thought that's why him and Trump work so well together, because they're two of the most pathetic men alive. They have more money and power than they could ever know what to do with. And yet they beg for attention on the internet. Like, they just want to be loved. And it just blows my mind. It reinforces that you can't buy love. But meanwhile, we all suffer, right? It is what it is. What do you have the coups? Venezuela. Yeah, Venezuela. Toyota Toyota Matrix. Yeah, I don't think that Venezuela is going to go well for anybody except the oil executives. It's funny when people say, well, we need the oil. And I'm like, who's we? Like, are you going to get some of these subsidies? Like, I mean, I guess if you have stock in Exxon or something, that's one thing. But come on, let's be reasonable. No American's going to see anything, you know. Uh, Nobody's going to see shit from it. Yes. And that's Toyota Matrix says yes. It was a campaign promise. Says I thought the administration would stop us from getting involved in wars. I guess that's the one that really blows my mind. I'm going to be the peace president. I'm not going to get us into any wars. And then he went and complained to Denmark because they didn't give him the peace prize. And he says, maybe I shouldn't be a president of peace. Like, this was a letter he wrote to, like, the premiers over there. And, like, a message, email, whatever. But it's like, he says, since you guys didn't want to give me the Nobel Prize, then maybe I should, maybe I'm not a peace president after all. Like, he's so bitter about not getting a little medal. Like, this is unfucking believable, dude. Like, the most powerful man in the world is crying about not getting a Nobel Peace Prize and then saying, well, then I'm just going to keep doing war. This guy's got us into more wars and more conflicts like in 1 year than I've ever seen in my life. I remember Iraq. I remember complaining about Bush and fucking Cheney and all that bullshit. But now we've got a guy just totally belligerent. It's like, yeah, we're just going to kidnap the Venezuelan president and bomb a bunch of their shit. Oh, yeah, we're really proud of the way we took out their grid. And, you know, oh, our guys are so good. Oh, now if Iran doesn't stop killing their protesters, we're going to go in there and we're going to take care of business. Like, he cares about protesters. And I'm just like, what? Like, and the whole time over the last year, I've just been sitting here like, okay, this is stupid. I'm going to go make a video and talk about something positive because that's what I do. But, you know, that's why I had to do this live cast. I just had to get this off my chest. So I apologize. You know, I don't apologize, actually. No, I just feel like it's essential. Like, it's just part of what we have to talk about. Like, this is complete fucking and utter bullshit. Okay. But I still know the American people are there behind the facade. Okay. Because when the curtain falls, let me just say, if Washington, D.C., as a whole, the whole thing, right? Let's just say on an average work day in Washington, D.C., the whole fucking place just disappeared off the face of the earth and became a forest. Every politician evaporated. What do you think would happen? I mean, I don't think it. I've only thought about this a few times and I've tried to think it through. Like, how would it really go, right? People's usual argument is, well, if we don't have that, then we'd be invaded right away and taken over. I say, by who? I mean, and why? Like, would people take certain areas for resources? I don't know. Like, I don't know what would happen. Every fucking American is armed. We don't need protection. Sure, we need missiles to protect against missiles, but are we really? We've lived on edge and expectation that everybody wants to kill us forever. That's only because everyone does, because of our stupid belligerence. But, you know, we were told they hate our freedoms, they hate who we are. It's like, no, they don't. They hate that you send your military over there to their country and try to tell them, we're going to make you a democracy. And I don't see how folks can't see this. And I hate to say it, but it is always the fucking Republicans that start the fucking wars, you know? And it doesn't mean the Democrats are any better because they don't end them. And the point is, basically what we have is belligerent Republicans and pussy-ass Democrats that can't do anything about it. And then we have a totally incompetent Supreme Court. Everybody in this whole fucking area is either super old or just a bunch of young liars, you know? I guess Kash Patel, the fucking director of the FBI, was supposed to go to like the Five Eyes meeting. This is over in Europe, and they do this where, like, you know, the different governments get together and talk seriously about, like, actual issues that might concern the public and, you know, concern security of your country. And I guess his people wrote and said that he he wants to be able to take his girlfriend and wants to make sure she can tour Windsor Castle, and that he wants to know what they're going to do for fun. He says he doesn't like office settings. Oh, he doesn't want to go to an office setting. He says he wants to do something else, like go to an event, like a festival, or a fucking go jet skiing. Like, this was an actual thing that was written to like world leaders to say, oh, our new FBI guy, yeah, he wants to go jet skiing. Like, where are the fucking adults? You know, are there any? You got this lying bitch up there with her fucking feeling her cross, like pretending like she's a Christian, who's like, you know, this, what is her name? Caroline Levitt. Like, I've listened to her and it's just, it's the cringiest shit I've ever heard in my life. It's like her and Vance and Miller and Trump. When you hear them talk, at least Trump's the guy who is totally fucking, you know, losing his mind. The rest of them are just liars, just straight up liars, and Americans believe it. And it's really time for people to see through that shit. I still haven't figured out why it's so hard for us to admit when we've been fooled. But there comes a time, my friends, and I think that that's when Americans are getting shot on the fucking street. I think that's kind of, you know, if immigrants are getting shot on the street, I don't think as many Americans would care, unfortunately. That's just sad to say, but when white American citizens are being killed on the street, I think people start to pay attention. And that's my hope anyway. Because I'll tell you, the anger that came out of me earlier when I heard about this shooting and I read about it, I didn't expect. I didn't even know I had that in me about, you know, politics, because I was really trying to avoid it all. But it was like this snap, this last straw. Just like, I am fucking livid, and I have a right to be livid. And that's the thing. If people say, oh, you know, liberals are just triggered, yeah, you better fucking believe that they are. I'm not a liberal myself, but I understand. Whoever takes whatever position, I do share a lot of liberal values. I just don't like fucking, you know, labels. I think they're bullshit. I try to be a human first and foremost, because if I associate with any group, it's like Groucho Marx said, I would never be a member of any group that would have me as a member. Something to that effect. Or I'd never join any group that would have me as a member. It's what keeps guys like me away from shit like the Freemasons, which I've been asked to join. And I'm like, why would I want to join the Freemasons now that I've learned probably more than I would learn there, sitting around with a bunch of guys eating pie and, you know, smoking cigars and talking about guy stuff, whatever. No, I don't want to be a part of a group. I want to be an individual who fucking thinks for myself. I want to be an individual who is rational, reasonable, and goddamn, that's fucking hard sometimes, because I find myself getting frustrated by the bullshit that I read, the bullshit that I see. So I try to turn it off. I try to get out of the algorithm, try to get away from it. Like I said, I went down in the woods and I was out there just tapping maple trees today. I actually ended up with like 5 gallons of fucking maple sap today. I was pretty stoked. I have like 12 taps, 14 taps, I think. I just kept collecting it and putting it in there in this big jug and transferring it. And I was getting a really good drip. That's some off topic, but I'm trying to live the normal life, right? I'm just trying to live my life out here on my property and enjoy it. And then I think, what is my dollar worth? What can I buy for groceries? What can I buy at all, really, other than just survival? Like, that's not what we were promised as Americans, that, you know, we would have a better wage and a better state, you know, of living than our parents. And thank God my wife and I were able to get a house back in like 2004, and it increased in value, so we were able to move up to this house now. I never take that for granted. Like, it's not money that we actually, some of it is money that we earned and saved, but some of it was just equity in the house as it gained. So we ended up owing money on our old house, but it's still worth more than that. That's a great thing. But millennials today, the younger generation, they don't get that fucking chance. They have no opportunity to even own a home. And then they're trying to find a job. And so you're like, well, they shouldn't complain. You know, stop buying lattes and avocado toast. That's the bullshit. Because the billionaires have made more money. I think in the last year, they've increased their wealth by like 800%.
It's insane. If you look at the numbers of how many more billionaires there are since I was a kid, it's astounding. And the amount of money that's going into these people's pockets while we still work for fucking minimum wage is absolutely bullshit. So when I say the federal government is incompetent, that's because in my state of Washington, our state has made it mandatory to pay something like $16.50 or something like that an hour for, I think it's like 17 now, if I'm not mistaken, minimum wage. You go down to the South in some of these places, Kentucky and Tennessee, I believe, they don't even have to pay waitresses an hourly wage. And even if they do have to pay somebody a wage, well, it comes out of their tips, right? It's gross. But even then, 750, I think, is still the federal minimum wage. These people are still living in the 1960s. It's absolutely gross. So, yeah, there's a lot to bitch about, but we don't need the federal government. We don't need their bullshit. I don't know. I I think states, I think we've come a long way. I think that I'm going to say we still need a spokesman for the country, right? But we need a representative. We need somebody who answers to the people. We need somebody who we can metaphorically knock on their door and say, we don't like what you're saying. Okay? It's a very difficult thing to do with this many people in a country, and I know that. I'm not stupid. I don't think that we could just give up on a federal government altogether and have nobody looking out for the country. I still believe in a basic military, but do we need a standing army? Do we need a fucking arsenal of thousands of nuclear weapons? And then for the president to even say that we're going to start making nukes again? Like, I mean, look, I wanted to believe that humans could evolve, and I do think that we are. I just think we're at a hiccup stage. Kind of a point, I guess you would call it like our teenage years, right? A little angsty, rebellious, but eventually realizing that we got to play by some rules or else, it's like the way you don't take care of yourself when you're young, but then you get older and you realize, oh shit, there's a fucking, you know, there's a time on this. I got to protect myself, got to take care of my body, got to take care of my health, be reasonable. Anyway, I want to read the comments again. I can't believe I've already been doing this for an hour and a half. Shit. Oh, hey, Adam. Good to see you, my friend. I haven't seen you in a while. Um, yeah. He says Trump offering to help Iran protesters while ours are being murdered in the streets. I know that was the biggest irony. It was more than a smack in the face. It was just like absolutely fucking nuts. So yeah, Stephen Miller is a scary guy. Vagabond Caleb, good to see you too. And yes, it will be. He said the Freemasons contacted you. You know, it's funny, Adam. You say that the Freemason thing. So I started my own business called Above the Level. It was a carpentry company, and I rented a booth at the Home and Garden Show in Portland. So you get like a 10 by 10 booth, right, where you can set up your stuff, bring in your table, and I was just sharing the work I'd done and trying to get jobs through it. And there was a guy like across the aisle, like three booths down, and he was looking over. And the name of my company was Above the Level, and I chose that because the one I wanted when I went to get my DBA, doing business as name, I was like using a borrowed computer, like at Kinko's or something, because I didn't have my own. So I ended up having to rush and pick a new name, and I just chose Above the Level. Started with A, works. So he's like, "Are you a Mason?" I'm like, "No." And why do you ask? He goes, "Oh, well, you're the name of your company is Above the Level." He's like, um, and then I realized what he was talking about. He's like, "Yeah, one of our Freemason quotes is on the level." That's like one of their quotes. It was just coincidental that I'd picked that name. But I was like, "No, but my grandpa was a Freemason. He was actually a Master Mason." He's like, "Oh, really? Where at?" And I was like, "Oh, out in Estacada." He's like, "Really?" He's like, "What was his name?" I was like, "Bob Watts." He's like, "No." He's like, it's like, "Yeah." He's like, "So when a Freemason dies, their book is given back to the lodge, and then it's passed on to a different person. I don't know if this is the same with every lodge. Turns out this guy 3 booths down that asked me if I was a Freemason had my grandfather's book. It was passed to him. And I happened to encounter this guy. And I was like, wow, that's weird. He's like, have you ever thought about joining the lodge? I'm like, I thought about it. I don't know if it's for me, though, you know? And I was like, besides, I'm a felon. He's like, oh, really? It's like, yeah, I just heard that they won't, you can't become a member if you have a criminal history. He's like, well, what's it for? It was like mushrooms, weed. He's like, oh, well, you can talk to your local lodge and, they can work through that. But I just never did because I'm like, I don't need to justify to a boys club why I got busted consuming psychedelic drugs. Like that, fuck, y'all should be taking them. I've got my own opinions on that one. I just feel like, no, I'd rather sit around with a bunch of hippies and taking acid than I would sit around in a boys club in some cathedral. That's just me. It wasn't my thing. And I've learned enough about Freemasonry to know what's in it. And I've done a lot of esoteric searching on my own. I was going to do a long video on esotericism and the occult. It'll be coming in the future, but it's something I don't talk about much because I've found that it's so personal that you can't really talk about it. It's not something you can share with people. It's something you just either research or you don't. And if you do, then a lot of people will attack you, especially Christians. And that's fine. So that's why I don't even talk about it, because I don't feel like I need to justify it to people who believe differently. But when I tell people that I believe in Christ, but Christ is a consciousness or an energy, they get mad at me. They want to believe Christ was really a blonde guy with a beard, that is going to come again. And that's just not the case. See, Jesus Christ can come right now, as far as I'm concerned. It depends on the person and what they're willing to find out. And I had some revelations about a year ago that really changed my perspective on a lot. Things I still haven't shared, which I actually did make like an 1.5 hour long kind of documentary video about. And I uploaded it, and I haven't made it public, and I probably won't. It was about my whole psychedelic history, my experiences. It happens a lot. Some of the longest, most detailed videos I just never end up sharing because it just seems so personal, But I also want to share these experiences with people because they have similar experiences, and, on and on it goes. Anyway, don't want to talk too much about psychedelics here, but Scapegoat says 5 gallons. Well, the 5 gallons is the maple sap. And then you have to boil it down, and it's like a 40 to 60 to 1 ratio. So, for example, I'd have to boil down 40 gallons of sap to get 1 gallon of syrup, if I'm lucky. So, 5 gallons would get me, like, what? A pint. But, it's all good. Well, 8 gallons, I guess, would get me a pint, something like that. So, yeah, you have to boil down 8 full gallons for, like, 10 hours just to get, like, a little pint of syrup. So I was thinking about actually bottling it as maple water, but because it actually tastes good by itself. It's not, when you hear sap, people think maple sap. I think of sap, but no, it's actually clear liquid like water, and it tastes like water. It just has a slightly sweet taste and a minerally taste because it has a lot of, I guess, magnesium, various, minerals in it, as well as electrolytes, which is good. So they sell it like as a workout thing, kind of like they do with coconut water and shit like that. And I was like, why make maple syrup if I could just sell maple water? So, and it makes me wonder, like, I wonder how many people are just selling regular water as maple water. Maybe just took a tiniest bit of sugar in there to make it sweet. Anyway, there's people ripping people off everywhere. It's one of the things I believe as a human is just to always be honest in doing business. I'd rather be broke than rip people off. But, there's plenty of shitballs out there who don't care. Oh, okay. Vagabond says $7.25 an hour in Indiana. Okay, so $7.25. That's the federal minimum wage then. That's pretty crazy shit. It really is. Adam says he spends way too much time noticing Freemason symbolism on old architecture. Dude, you can never spend too much time. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Just like the next comment that I noticed, the esoteric journey can be very lonely. Oh, Apple. Apple, my friend. I've never seen your name before. I don't know if you've commented before, but yes, it is extremely lonely. And only another journeyer would understand that it's lonely because it feels so right, so honest, and so true. I Let's just say I had an experience of gnosis about 8 months ago, and I understood at once what it was because I'd learned about the Gnostics and gnosis and knowledge and how people derive knowledge in the past. And I've always asked myself this simple question: how did people know? Like, who were the first guys to learn these things, and how did they learn them and teach them to other people? And how do we know they're right? And I, like many men searching, have wrestled with this in my head for years. Like, how do you know if sitting in a lotus style, or putting your hands in a specific position, or closing your eyes, or looking at the sun, or thinking a certain way, or acting a certain way? How do you know if any of it is actually legit or does any good for you, or if it's placebo, or if it even matters if it's placebo? Well, for a lot of us, we can't convince ourselves of bullshit. And I can't, placebo doesn't work for me. I need actual effect. And at the same time, I don't know if what I believe to be true is placebo. But let me just say, I went into a very intense psychedelic sessions, multiple sessions over a period of weeks, where, and I was using Special K, ketamine. It was self-administered. I got the dose the way I needed it. Did it under no supervision, very irresponsibly, with headphones and very specific tones, listening to Mayan flutes and whatnot, experimenting with what worked and what didn't. In the end, putting forth the intention, saying, I'm prepared to gain knowledge. I want to understand these things. I have never had any experiences like that. It was when people talk about going through the stages of awareness, or it could be climbing the ladder. Maybe it's Jacob's ladder to some, or it could be the degrees in Freemasonry. But it was preparing, each session was preparing me for the next one, to where by the time I finished this, and this was several sessions over a few months, then a few months break, then a few more months, by the end, completely, it changed me in a way that helped me to accept and understand that God is always present, in a way where I don't believe anymore, but I know. See, when people, it's like, I can't remember who was asked that. They're like, do you believe in God? He said, no, I don't believe in God. I know. That was Carl Jung. Yes, Carl Jung was a huge inspiration for my own individuation and searching through these things. And as I started to gain more understanding about myself, I started to realize what man can become if we try. And it doesn't mean we have to do anything great in society's eyes. In fact, a lot of the greatest things are never even noted until decades, if not centuries, after the person dies, right? We know this. People in their own time are ridiculed as philosophers. And then later on, society catches up to the reality. So I'm more than willing to be wrong today to know what I know is right tomorrow. That we are all part of this larger system that has multiple layers, wheels upon wheels. And the cycle, you could call it samsara, you can call it whatever, reincarnation, however you want to label the thing. None of us can understand it in this form. We can only catch glimpses of it. It's like standing on a jewel and trying to see every facet. You can run one direction, but then you can't see the beginning anymore. And my nose is getting kind of stuffy. I refuse to get sick. I don't know where that came from. Well, that's a state of mind, actually. Not necessarily getting sick, but how your body reacts to it. It's all about perception, right? What a world, my friends. What a world. So, yes, that was my long apple turd pie response that, yes, the esoteric journey can be extremely lonely. Fool's journey, hero's journey. Oh, cymatics. Oh, man, I really have fucking. I have a bunch of videos about cymatics on my channel from way back in the day. And I had I still have it. I have this huge bass speaker with like a big plexiglass plate over it, and I was playing with sand, and I got a bunch of magnetic sand too, which reacted differently with it. But I was creating my own patterns and shapes, and I always wanted to get a real Chaldney plate, which a Chaldney plate is like a thin plate that's over a speaker, and you can change the frequency and the sand at certain frequencies. Like for example, I think like standard 440 tuning is what you get with most music today. But you can tune your guitar or instruments to what they would call angelic tones, like 432 hertz, right? Funny enough, all the hertz always add up to 9. There's 432, 523. It doesn't matter. Anyway, they do seem to have a different effect. And I was listening to various frequencies, what you would call binaural beats, but I was kind of creating my own. I had this app one time where you could do it. But anyway, you're supposed to get one frequency in each ear, maybe at like 3 hertz difference, depending on what you're doing. Alpha, delta, beta waves, those kinds of things. It's pretty crazy shit. It's pretty crazy shit. Mother, do you think dropped the bomb? Mother, do you think I like this song? You guys know that song, Pink Floyd. I was just learning how to play that the other day. I'm like, that's got to be the simplest song to learn. Oh, mother, do you think they'll try to break my balls? And I was listening to The Wall, and I was just thinking of what a great fucking album that is. And then, that song came on. I posted something about it. The worms in The Wall were meant to represent Pink. Basically his dark, his likelihood of descending into hateful, racist bullshit rhetoric, and how we build up walls between us and society. And it's such a great album. And I was listening to classic rock the other day, just a playlist, and I was thinking, what happened? Where did we go wrong? Like, there's still some good music out there, but like, dude, there's some really great songs from the 70s. I mean, 60s too, 70s, 80s, whatever. But man, like, God, they hit different. They really hit different. I won't get all nostalgic on you, I promise. So anyway, I'll probably end this soon because I could talk forever, but I've got to go get some dinner. And unless any of y'all have any things you want to talk about or any questions or anything like that, I'm going to finish reading through the comments here. Huh. That's funny, Vagabonds. It's very funny. The psychedelics are what caused me to stop being an atheist and eventually back to believing in Jesus. I can never explain this to my grandparents. I'm with you. Well, I asked for the truth, and I got the truth. And when I got the cross, it came in a certain form that helped me to understand what the cross was. It quite literally is that crossing between the ethereal and our plane of existence. And you can further add, like, the ring around it, or the halo, or sometimes there's 2 T's on the cross, and they all have different meanings. And honestly, what it comes down to is the symbology, what it means to you. So you can use any symbol or any type of stone or anything to represent whatever you want, as long as you have faith in that. But I do believe that the more people that stand behind something, the more power it can have.
which is why, yes, churches are powerful, but everybody kind of believes a little different. Like, and I believe that if you have an experience of gnosis, then you're in a group of people, a very small group of people, in my opinion. And you have no desire to prove it to anybody. You have no interest in explaining it to anybody. You don't try to convince anyone to believe what you believe. And you're very confident 100% that what you know is true. And once you, in my experience, once you've achieved that, that's gnosis. As I go back to Carl Jung, I don't believe, I know. And I know exactly what he meant by that. My experience with God was so fucking pronounced, so real, and so much more real than this. But not just that, the synchronicities that came during that experience, those experiences. I mean, we're talking synchronicities every 2 seconds, like somebody saying words that happen to do with what I'm doing at the moment. And I know the mind can play tricks on us, but sometimes we know when it's more than tricks. And it comes down to the intention. It doesn't take psychedelics. You can sit down quietly and do it in a totally sober meditation. But sometimes those aids do assist people. So it's a fucking weird